Welcome into a Hump Day edition of Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, we need to get the Falcons' pass defense cranked up and going. Will Snitker do the right thing with the rotation? And we'll talk to my friend Gabe Burns from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We'll go through all things Atlanta Braves. It's all next. Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
We welcome you into this Hump Day edition of Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta in the search browser. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. Download us today. Leave us a 5-star review. Amazon, Fire, and Roku. You can find us on those platforms now as well. And, of course, at JMCH316 is my Twitter page if you would give me a follow there. We've kind of known that the Falcons' pass defense over these last couple of weeks has not been all that great, right? And we talked a little bit about picking on A.J. Terrell and things like that. Now we have some numbers to give us some sort of perspective, at least through the first couple of weeks of the NFL season, where the Falcons are at. So here are the numbers, if you will, Maestro. The Falcons have given up the 7th most completions in the NFL through the first couple of weeks. The Falcons have also given up the 4th highest completion percentage through the first couple of weeks. They are tied for the 9th highest most yards per attempt. They've given up the 11th most yards in the NFL. They're tied for giving up the 4th most touchdown passes. They're also tied for 5th in giving up the most first downs through the pass in the NFL. Now, the good news is they have 5 sacks. So that ties them for 12th right now. The interesting thing that I think a lot of people forget, the Falcons had 4 sacks through their first 2 games last year. Did you know that? You remember that? For a team that only had 18 sacks, think about that. They had 4 sacks through their first 2 games, and then for their final 15 games, only found 14 more sacks. So we've seen a nice start to the pass rush even last year. Now, do I think this year's pass rush is going to fade and go into oblivion? No, I think we're much better equipped. You know why? Because we don't have the vagabonds like Steven Means and Dante Fowler and guys like that running around that just muck your defense up, put your defense in quicksand. So I feel better about the pass rush, even though we're about the same stead where we were last year. Now, the Falcons secondary this past weekend, if we get into the analytic, sabermetric, metrosexual stats that people like, we get in the pro football focus world. The Falcons secondary ranked 28th in the NFL last week. And for the season, A.J. Terrell's pro football focus grade is 57.1. Last year was in the 80s. Casey Hayward's pro football focus grade is 62.3. Now, the good news about those guys is that we are coming up with some interceptions. So we are creating some turnovers. We've been creating sacks in the passing game. But if you think about the fact, A.J. Terrell has given up the 8th most receptions when he's in his target zone. And that's 10 total receptions that he's given up. Why that's an interesting stat is last year, A.J. Terrell for the entire season only gave up 29 receptions when targeted in his zone. And he's already given up 10 this year. Good news is Casey Hayward has been pretty good. He's only 56th as far as receptions allowed in his zone. So look, what does all of this mean? Simple. We got to be better against the pass. Part of that comes from your pass rush, right? I don't care how great your corners are. If you can't sack the quarterback, it's tough to be really good. And last year, A.J. Terrell was so good with nobody on the other side that you could crush the other side of the field where A.J. Terrell wasn't standing. Now, we'll talk more about this in just a second. But first, let me talk about my friends over at BetOnline.net. Listen, we're neck deep in it now. We're in football season all the way, college, pro. We got MMA, boxing, golf, and don't look now, baseball postseason is just a few weeks away from getting cranked up. You want to be smarter. You want to have better information when it comes to your sports wagering. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports wagering information. You need eScores, betting information, lines, odds, spreads, podcast news, fantasy, whatever you need. Everything is right at your fingertips at betonline.net. Take that mobile device. It's not easier than this. Take the mobile device that you've got, okay, and put in betonline.net and go there today and check out all of the information that they have to make you smarter when it comes to getting into sports wagering. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports wagering information, and it's where the game starts. So your secondary obviously has to start with its pass rush, which I feel like we're better. If we can get consistent pressure on quarterbacks, you will most definitely not only help your secondary in coverage, but like you've seen in these first couple of weeks, you force quarterbacks to have to release the football quicker, make quicker throws, tougher throws, less accurate throws. So I think that, am I worried about the Falcons' pass defense through the first couple of weeks? Not really. And if you look coming up this week, and we'll preview the game when we get to Friday, the Seahawks are, I think, the best rushing team in the NFL. They're right near the top in most all of the rushing statistics, right? You don't want to put the ball in Geno Smith's hand to throw it 40 sometimes. But, you know, you get back from that, you come back home. I know Jacoby Brissett and that Nick Chubb-led rushing attack, but you still have Amari Cooper and guys like that. And then, oh, yeah, it's down to Tampa. And I can assure you that dude down there is going to huck it around. So we need to start to see some steady improvement in the Falcons' pass defense. You know, most of the numbers are pretty good all the way around, but it's too many completions, too high a percentage, too many first downs still with this passing attack. And it's been interesting because you're seeing teams that are not afraid to go after and target A.J. Terrell. Now, maybe part of that is because a lot of teams do respect Casey Hayward, and it's pick your poison, right? Because last year, when it's A.J. Terrell on one side and Fabian Moreau on the other, that's a no-brainer. That's the biggest no-brainer in the history of mankind. I'll throw it all day at Fabian Moreau's side, and I know I'm going to have huge success there because I got a special teams player that's playing corner. Hence, some of the numbers. So no doubt about it that A.J. Terrell benefited from the fact that teams weren't willing to throw for him, against him, I should say. Now you're starting to see that numbers kind of spread a little bit more evenly. I love our two corners. We talked again. This is the best two corners the Falcons have had. Maybe, again, what did we say? Ashley Ambrose and Ray Buchanan, you know, coming off the Super Bowl year in 98. It's been a long time since we felt like we've had two cover corners like this. And I think both guys will continue to adjust. Again, the Pro Football Focus grades aren't necessarily where you want to be, but that doesn't tell the whole story. If the Falcons can find their consistent pass rush and they can continue to dial it up against quarterbacks and sack the quarterback, and you change up down in distance to where teams are going to have to throw. Part of it, too, is play with a lead. You also make your life easier if you can play with a lead in the NFL, you know, where teams have to come back on you. So there are some numbers that have to change and get better for the Falcons pass defense. Am I panicked or worried? No. But it's certainly, I don't think, the start that we thought even a couple of games in that Casey Hayward and A.J. Terrell would have. They don't grade out very high. They've been picked on. Terrell especially has been picked on. And I'll give Michael Thomas and Jameis Winston credit. They did a good job. And I'll give Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp credit. Very few people in the NFL stop Cooper Kupp. There's a reason why he was the offensive player of the year and the Super Bowl MVP and had the greatest season ever for a wide receiver. So one area of the defense to focus in on over these next few weeks, as it's Seattle, the Browns, and at Tampa Bay, is getting that pass defense better, getting these corners, getting more into that shutdown mode that we thought was coming for them. All right, when we come back, will Snitker do the right thing with the rotation? We'll talk about that next. Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.